Internet, my name is Katie Turner and this is Learning to Learn. Hey guys, welcome back. So the time has come for us to start studying anatomy and physiology. Woohoo! So I actually started this past week and I've been working through the first few modules. And so I thought I would just sort of do little updates as I go and talk to you about some of the strategies I'm using and why. The first module in this course, which is through OLI with Carnegie Mellon, is actually focused on how to succeed in the course. I didn't start any anatomy and physiology in this module, but I was learning about sort of their philosophy behind the way they've structured the class and the way that they have it set up. I actually really love it, especially with this journey that I'm on and the goals that I have. It actually fits perfectly, and I didn't even realize it until I started going through this module. They're trying to use cognitive science to improve online learning. So I think that's great and I'm happy to help. So as I go through this first module, what I realize is they use a lot of the terms and a lot of the principles that I'm trying to use. So one of the things they started off with was talking about something called metacognition, which you've probably heard from a teacher. Metacognition is basically just thinking about thinking. And it's being intentional about your learning. That is part of metacognition. And so when we talk about all the things that we're trying to implement here, we're practicing metacognition. So I wanted to talk about two features of this online course that I really like. And they introduced those in this first module so that you could get an idea of why they are using them and how they're going to benefit you as a student. The first is called Learn by Doing. Throughout each module, there are these little moments where it pauses and has you answer a question or complete an activity. And this is what they call Learn by Doing. And this is not mind-blowing, this is what I do as a teacher, but it's good to see that they're practicing this because it is part of the learning process and a very important part. And then the second thing that they use is called Did I Get This? And it's a check for understanding, basically. Did I understand what I just learned? And so they quiz you on this. Now this brings in one of the terms that I've mentioned, which is the testing effect. The testing effect is very important and very useful when it comes to studying. And you don't have to wait until the end of a unit or the end of a chapter or whatever it may be to assess your learning. You as a student don't have to wait for your teacher to give you a quiz or give you a test to see if you understood it or to see how you did on learning. You actually really should be quizzing yourself constantly as you're learning new information to make sure that you're understanding it correctly and that you're retaining it. So some of the ways that you can do this. If you are studying on your own and using a textbook, you could look in the textbook for the questions at the end of a reading section or at the end of a chapter and use those to quiz yourself. You could also go back through your notes and try to ask yourself questions and come up with your own original questions based on the notes. I actually really like this strategy because I have taught academic teams, and one of the best things they can do is to look at the material they're supposed to be learning, and they can come up with their own questions. And more often than not, the questions that they come up with are very similar, if not the same, as questions that show up on the actual test. If you put yourself in the mindset of a teacher, then it makes you think a little bit differently about the information, and you have to look up the right answer to your question. This brings up something very important, which is that your intentions have to be honest as you're doing this. You need to be honest with yourself. So if you're coming up with your own questions, don't make them easy. Don't throw yourself softballs. Give yourself more difficult questions. The more difficult they are and the more you have to think about it and search for that answer, the more beneficial it is to you. In my module, they had a couple of quizzes, and as I was doing some of those quizzes, there were questions I got right, but I knew that I didn't really know it. It was a lucky guess. So I have to be honest with myself and say, okay, I didn't really know that. Even though I got it right, that doesn't give me a free pass to go, okay, I don't need to know that information, I got it. It's like, well, next time I may not guess the same way. So if there is a question that you get correct, but you know that you didn't really know it confidently, then you might want to review that. On the flip side of that, if there's a question that you knew and you were confident because you just know that information, then don't spend time studying that later because you already know it. For example, there was a question about the brain in one of my quizzes, and I teach the brain and I know quite a bit about the brain now. And so I knew the answer to that one without even reading the whole question, and I got it correct. So I'm not gonna go back and review that. I'm not gonna write that information down because I already know it. So this brings me to another tip that I have for you, which is that when you are studying, you wanna focus on the things that you struggled with, not on the things that you feel confident in. And I know it's uncomfortable, but that's how growth happens. If you spend more time studying the things that you're already confident in, you're wasting your time. You already know it. You've already got it. And then you're not actually practicing the things that you need help with. Now, this can be hard because sometimes you need help with it. You can't wrap your head around it. So you're having trouble with it. Maybe you seek tutoring from your instructor. Maybe you talk to a friend, or maybe it's just a simple Google search away and you go to YouTube or Google and you look up different ways to explain that concept or different definitions. And this is something that I do all the time. One thing that a lot of teachers do that I think is actually really great is called pre-assessment. It sounds weird because you're getting a test on a topic that you haven't learned yet, and it feels really weird for students. But what's kind of cool about it is it's a preview of what you're about to learn, and it also sometimes shows you where you do have some intuition of understanding this content that you didn't know you already had, or there's some background information that you didn't know you already had in your back pocket that you didn't know related to what you're going to learn. All right, so since this first module wasn't really getting into my content, I didn't take a lot of notes on it, and also I know a little bit about a lot of the things they're trying to incorporate psychologically. So I didn't take as many notes. So next video, I'm going to show you module 2, where I actually start getting into some of the new information that I didn't already know, and I'm already nerding out about learning about anatomy and physiology. I'm going to show you what a real study session for me looks like as I'm learning new content. So this will be not necessarily a study review session as a content acquisition, knowledge acquisition session. So stay tuned to see how I take notes, how I prepare myself for study sessions, and how I take in new information. All right, guys, have a great day, and we'll see you back here next time.